I ran across this article the other night, but I hadn't picked it yet, and Allie was getting the ball rolling. What was that on Tuesday? I think Tuesday afternoon you sent this out, and I was like, I think this is the right one we ought to do. We've touched on this before. We had a little bit of a conversation on this one.
It was Alan's idea, but Allie reaffirmed Alan's idea.
Yeah. She did. She did.
That's very sus.
And David, as usual, tried to poo-poo on it a little bit. But
I'm here to shoot holes in it.
Yes. And I get it, because we have touched on this before, but it's like, here's just another article, another example. And it's, but it's from our own side. I mean, it's from Christianity Today, and they are evangelical. I know some people don't care for them very much because they're maybe coming from a little bit different perspective. But the title's kind of funny. Evangelicals are the most beloved U.S. faith group among evangelicals.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And then in fine print.
I am shocked.
But
And then
let's
in fine print, and among the worst rated by everyone else.
right. And that's where the story is, because the reality is probably every faith group will probably have somewhat of a high view of themselves. And down in the article, you'll see that our view of ourselves at 60% is lower than many of the others who had higher views of themselves. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, it was funny, and creative little heading there. So
I couldn't read the whole article because I don't have an account.
oh man,
All right.
just let me know.
It's free.
It's one of
It
those
only
where you only
unlocks.
you get 3 free articles, and
Yeah.
then it just locks after it.
So
What else you been reading?
to me, the main topic on this is I don't even think we needed a poll to let us know that right now, at least evangelical Christianity is not seen in a very good light.
Yeah.
And we fall under the Southern Baptist camp, and we're the largest denomination within evangelical circles. And we've been in the news, quite a bit as of lately. And so to me, I think it's worth talking about. Because I do think that there are some things that we can learn from this. And so let's start with this. One, should we care? Should we, as evangelicals or as Southern Baptists, should we care how we're viewed? And is this like a Matthew 5:11 issue where this is just part of being a Christian? We're just going to be seen in a bad light, and we just need to be comfortable with the fact that the world's going to see us with these eyes. So what are y'all's thoughts on this one? And it can be nuanced, you know what I mean?
There's definitely a lot of nuance to this.
So David, since you were excited about this article, what's your overall thought?
I mean, I didn't think it was a bad article, but we like to dog ourselves a lot, especially as evangelicals. I thought it was an interesting article, and I think some of the poll numbers are very interesting. Like you said, how evangelicals think of ourselves pretty highly compared to everyone else. But I thought it was pretty interesting that the overall American poll, so it's between favorable, don't know, and unfavorable. And so Americans towards evangelicals, 28% are favorable, and then 27% are unfavorable. And then you have 44% of people that don't know.
Right, which is a large
Yeah, that's a
group.
large amount of people.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're almost the same on both sides of don't like and do like, and I feel like it should be a lot more unfavorable, in my opinion. Or I guess I was more surprised that there wasn't more unfavorable. Not that I think there should be more unfavorable, because just in the light of the culture, especially nowadays, it just seems everything that is Christian corresponds with evangelical Christians, not necessarily just Christianity as a whole. Especially in the United States, because anything that's bad that is represented by a Christian belief is usually given to evangelicals. So
I think a little bit that might be skewed. I mean, living in the South, everything is evangelical,
Right.
but just 10 years ago, everything towards Catholics was negative. They went through their whole sex scandal and cover up and everything. And when you're up there, growing up there, Southern Baptists, they had no idea what a Southern Baptist was.
Yeah.
I mean, I might as well
sure.
have been a Mormon in their mind. Matter of fact, we were considered Mormons, to them, and they would ask that question. And so,
Well, Mormons and Baptists get confused for each other a lot.
yeah, they do.
yeah,
There was a statistic out for a while. I know this because I grew up in the Mormon church, and people love sticking me on every Mormon they come in contact with. But the largest, this is old information, so I don't know if it's still true, but for a while there, the largest convert for a Mormon to join another church was Southern Baptist. Simultaneously, the largest convert for someone leaving a Southern Baptist church was going to a Mormon church.
Whoa.
So it's almost like we were so close to each other in how generally the way the churches behave and operate that we were basically trading members back and forth.
But belief systems are so
They're
different.
very
That's
really
wild.
are.
Yeah.
They
But
really
we had Mormons in our small group for
Yeah.
the longest time. They would
Yeah.
actively come to church and
Yeah.
sit in our small group.
Yeah,
and
'cause
they
other than
asked
the
The reality
questions. It
is
was
that
great.
most church members, even in the Southern Baptist Church, are very nominal. They come, and but their understanding of the Bible's pretty low, and so it would be. And we're a large denomination, so it would be easy to pick off some Southern Baptists because I don't know how many million, I can't remember, but we're a large denomination, and a lot of people attend, and many of them are once a month, type of people who come that really don't know their theology very well. And
Well, I mean, and the thing is, like, being Christians, we're hypocrites, right? I mean, that goes with the territory because we're sinners and we're not perfect and we're not all that in a bag of chips. That was something we said in my generation that people got really annoyed with. We're not perfect. We're not great. And, in our flawed human efforts of trying to share the gospel with people, we express that in an unfortunate way a lot of times that makes it seem like we're holier than thou. And it's like, well, you were telling people you got to get your life right, and our lives aren't even right. So I get that. But the biggest thing is, and you made the comment, and this kind of leads back to that whole bad press thing. We've gotten a lot of bad press.
yeah.
And I'm not just talking about recently with the investigations that we paid as SBC to do. I'm just talking about in general. I mean, you've got the crazies out there like Westboro, right? That go and picket everything, and they make the news every time they show up somewhere, and these people are not loving Jesus. These people are radicals, and they're not like everybody else. But just like everything else, what makes news is the radicals. It is the people that are far on one side
A
or the
loud
other.
minority.
But outside of that thought, though, SBC has really done some. I mean, somebody's going to shoot me for saying this, but SBC has really done some terrible things. And what I mean by that is when we try to boycott Disney because Disney does an
Goes back to our
LGBTQ day, right, or whatever. When we try to boycott Disney, what do we think we're accomplishing there? All we're doing is saying that we hate a subsect of people because they're different. It's like, that's not sharing the love
I don't
of
know if
Christ.
it means that we hate
Yeah,
them,
no.
but we do stand against
But
that lifestyle.
it reads,
It
reads
Yeah.
to everybody else
it
as
d-
though we are so adamantly against these people, and that we are going to boycott a company that supports it. And
Now,
it's
have
like,
we done that? Have we boycotted them recently? Because I know there's like a big LGBT.
There was a big thing movie like early, maybe mid 2010s to early 2010s.
Yeah, a while back, right.
yeah, but there's been times where SBC has done stuff like that, and unfortunately, that stuff sticks around. You know,
for sure.
that thing sticks around, and again, it's not that we're saying we hate those people. We disagree with their lifestyle and choices that they're making. But again, that goes back to we're hypocrites because we make mistakes too. We make decisions that are not Christ glorifying, and so it's just like we have to be careful what we do. So I think we should care, how we're viewed and all that kind of stuff, because our goal is not to condemn people. Our goal is to set people free.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what is the purpose of the church? Well, the Great Commission. Every church has the same purpose statement, the same mission. It's to go and make disciples of all nations.
Right.
And so that's where I'm just like, sometimes I feel like we lose our focus. And I think that politics is important. I think Christians should be involved. But I do get a little nervous when corporately, as a denomination, we may make a stance on something because we're not, that is probably our stance as a denomination, but I would rather be known for what we're doing and what we believe in and not just throw out the statement. Everyone already knows that, as most evangelical churches, that we don't support or celebrate maybe a gay lifestyle, but it doesn't mean that we don't have friends or family members or people that we associate with that we love that are doing things that we don't agree with. That's called humanity. And also another thing is, I think we are all hypocrites. Atheists are hypocrites. Every one of us, because we all have values, and none of us are good at standing up to our own standards. Whatever our standards are, we all break our standards. So we're all hypocritical. It's just that ours are out there, and we are hypocritical like everybody else.
But let me give you a slightly different example, and I have no context for this. It's just something that kind of entered my mind while you were talking is, rather than we don't stand for abortion. In fact, we very much stand against abortion. We do not condone the killing of babies in any way, shape, or form. To me, it's like, okay, let's invest money rather than investing money as an SBC. And I'm not saying we have or haven't, but I'm just giving it a theoretical example. Rather than investing money in a campaign that talks about how much we dislike abortion and how much we stand against abortion, invest our time and resources into a way to provide so that people don't have to have abortions, And again, I'm not saying we don't do that, but I'm saying rather than spending money on saying we're against this, spend money on providing an alternative, spend resources on providing an alternative, and that's a way that your perception could change, is rather than just standing up and saying I don't like something or I'm against something, saying, hey, we have an alternative for you.
It's so tough. That would, to me, I was like, what are the ones that are worth fighting for and pushing back against? And for me, the right to life is one of those where it's like there's a legal side where you've got to give some pushback and you've got to make a stance. And then there's the influential side of having those conversations and sitting down. And what I think, and where you're going with it is we definitely need to put much more emphasis on building bridges, having conversations, because I do think that we'd realize we're a lot more alike than we are different in a lot of ways. And on this issue, it does make it harder, because if you don't put money towards pushing back against an agenda of the other side, then laws aren't going to be passed. And that's where it does get messy. It's unavoidable. And that's one of the few issues where I'm like, you know what? If it makes us look bad to other people who are more pro-choice, then so be it, for me.
Yeah.
But I get your point. Your point is, in general, we are known by what we stand against, and we'll put a lot more of our passion and more of our emotion goes into the negativity a lot than what we're for.
I have a hard time. I really struggle with this, like this big identifier as evangelical, just because I think that encompasses a group of people who, like you said, very infrequently attend church, maybe have just very shallow depth of scripture. Yep. And so it's hard for me to know, like, what are the markers of somebody who would be considered evangelical. And so I think
as a Baptist church.
Yeah. I think as a whole, like, I don't even like the fact that there is an identifier like that out there. And
well, it's an umbrella that's catching a lot of us that really
don't belong under it.
Right.
Well, we don't identify with it. And a lot of it is probably our approach. It's probably more of our form. We're uncomfortable with the form of some of the people and the way that they live out their faith and they engage the community.
Yes.
I would say that we deserve to be under that umbrella, but the word evangelical has lost all meaning.
Yeah.
Like it has there's
no definition.
Well, the definition of it has gone so far off of what it actually is that I think it's just so misunderstood of what it actually it is. Even if you ask an evangelical, what is an evangelical? You're like, well, it's someone who goes to a Baptist church. Not that someone who's like worried about evangelizing the gospel.
Right. And I think the other thing for me that I'm noticing myself do more of is having to make, not an excuse, but to make up reasons why someone was treated away by an evangelical before, who might be like starting to turn away from the gospel. And so we put so much effort into undoing the work or the damage somebody else has already done. And that's really difficult to deal with. And so, why would anyone like us when we're just I say we as in like that umbrella term, it's very confusing because we are not focused on what the true definition of an evangelical is. But even more than that, like we should absolutely care. We care about our eternity, and we should care about other people's eternity enough that they like us. I mean,
you have to build
how difficult
bridges.
is it to approach someone and be like, there is hope for you. And they're like, I dislike you so much. You know what I mean? You're not a simp,
right.
Whoa. And so,
vocabulary of the day.
I mean, it's frustrating to me that this is the way we're viewed. But I think if you were to look at, other religions and how they would be viewed in comparison to evangelicals, there are a lot of people who don't step on toes. And so in a weird way, it's like an encouragement because people probably don't like us because we're standing up for what we believe in. Are there other ways to do those things? Absolutely.
That's the key. What's effective, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I think it needs to be known that we're known for what we stand against. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
But also at the end of that, we are also known for what we stand for.
Right.
So I think it's two-part. You have to know both dynamics of the situation.
My dad gave me a book when I got my first job, and it was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
A very common book, that every kid needs to read on, the importance of relationship and how you present yourself. And you want your children. I mean, one of our goals as parents is to raise our kids in such a way that other people like them and that they can interact with other people, because that will mean that your child will be more successful if they can integrate and get along in society and be a blessing to other people. And so I think that, they gave a couple of examples of scripture that I thought were really good. And then I ran across a couple of other ones, but just listen to a couple of these scripture passages. A good name is to be chosen over great wealth. Favor is better than silver or gold. I mean, that's just a good proverb right there that we could live by. A good name is better than fine perfume. That's out of Ecclesiastes. The two passages that they gave is one in Colossians, act wisely towards outsiders. Make the most of your time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you should answer each person. It doesn't mean that we can't disagree with someone or have a good conversation, because that's where you learn. I think most people like that. That's why we like podcasts. We like conversations and disagreement. And then a qualification of a deacon, okay? If you're going to be a leader in a church, furthermore, he must have a good reputation among outsiders. Outside the church is what that means.
And that's in Timothy, right?
Yeah, right. And so it's just
Drop
like,
that Bible knowledge.
so we ought to care.
He's been using his flashcards.
Learning, yep. So how about
All
this?
the deacon stuff is in Timothy.
That's true.
So we recognize.
Before we go on, though,
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to realize that in that scripture about having our speak seasoned with salt doesn't mean we're salty people.
Salty people. Yeah.
No,
But we are. The salt is meant to preserve and to,
Yeah.
and,
Cleanse.
cleanse and have
Yeah.
truth.
It was profitable.
Yeah.
Salt was important. And
I have
So
that
don't be
scripture.
salty.
I have that scripture taped to my work phone.
Be salty.
Yeah.
No, like to season your tongue with salt.
So you don't be mean to people on the phone.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's helped.
I mean, it's,
I'm sure it has.
What's interesting is, some of the questions you ask is, should we care, the Matthew 5:11, because we're going to be persecuted because we're believers. And, and I was looking up this passage that I knew I'd seen before. And it was in Matthew 10, it's like, you'll be hated because of my name, kind of a thing. And the idea behind it is, I'm not saying we're not ever going to have a negative worldview. Like, people are never going to look at us and say, oh, well, Christians are great. They're awesome. They're wonderful. Because the truth is, we're sharing the gospel, and it's the intent behind sharing the gospel, though, is eternal salvation and eternal freedom, not damnation. And it's kind of like you said, it's our approach sometimes that makes it seem like it's damning, and we're not trying to be that way. But I think that's what has been viewed. And we've kind of gotten to this point culturally where you can't disagree with someone, right? Mm-hmm. If you disagree with them, you hate them. We've lost the art of being able to not necessarily agree, but still be friendly and have disagreements and not, oh, well, that's the end, kind of thing. It's like, well, that's terrible, because we're not always going to agree, and we have talked about this subject before. And I remember something that just hit me, because you guys know, I've said this, I struggle with the idea of how to continue loving on people when I disagree with their lifestyle. It's hard for me to do that. Like, I struggle with it hardcore. And I remember
everyone does.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm over here on this island, like, everybody's so good at loving on people that are making terrible decisions in their life, and I'm like, stop making bad decisions. But what was it from Liar Liar? Stop breaking the law. Mm-hmm. But our pastor made a comment when this was during the height of COVID season, and we were talking about COVID and vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And our pastor made the comment that, two Bible believing people, and this was a private conversation, but it wasn't anything that's outside of being able to be shared. Two Bible-believing people can look at a subject, and both of them love Jesus and love God and read their Bible and come to different conclusions about a subject, because it's just the nature of being human. And
it's nuance.
It's nuance, it's experience, it's what has led you to this point in your life. And he was like, so we can't, sometimes there are things where absolutely we can, but sometimes we can't take a definitive stance down to an nth degree because someone may see something different than you. And, so it's kind of like, but we've lost the art of being able to disagree and not just hate each other because we're not in agreement.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, and I mean, I've lost relationships over it because I'm no better at it than anybody else. But once upon a time, I feel like there was a time in our culture where we could disagree with someone and it didn't mean we hated their guts.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I can remember being in college and beginning to learn about politics and like, oh man, they totally lied on this side or that side, but it was not as venomous as it is, now. And you could actually, you could have people disagree and still be civil with one another. It's gotten so crazy. And, unique perspective, and I've talked about this before, but growing up in the Northeast, even though my roots are Southern, growing up in the Northeast and then church planting in Colorado, some of the things that I think we can work on as Christians, what can we do to help build bridges is one, and I saw this a lot, even though like in Colorado, I would say within the whole population, you're probably looking at 35 to 45% would be conservative. The majority would definitely be more on the liberal side of things in Colorado. So within a church setting, there's a little bit more mixture typically in the church than there would be in the South. In the South, you're almost assumed that 90%, at our church would be Republican, right? But even in a church like that out there, I would have to remind my Republican brothers and sisters in Christ, don't assume that everyone agrees with your politics because you bring it up as if obviously, you know what I mean? And I've even heard that happening here in our church. Not very often, but especially within younger generations, sometimes a teacher can assume something and there's a generational difference there that that teacher may not recognize. And so just don't assume that everyone agrees.
Well, and our pastor has made that comment. He's like, don't assume everybody sitting next to you is a Republican.
Yeah.
There are good, God-loving, Bible-believing
Praise the Lord.
Democrats that go to our church, and that's okay.
Yeah, and have different priorities.
Or independents.
Or
don't
independents,
forget about them.
don't forget the independents.
Yeah,
Even-
The libertarians.
Yeah.
Even in like a non-political fashion, like what you just said about the generational differences, that has been something that's been so valuable for me in learning how to have that likability factor. So things that I think are really obvious to myself and the generation below me. My precious baby brother-in-law just has a different insight, and he's a campus missionary right now. And so it's neat to interact with him and understand what he's seeing on college campuses and just how he's learning to be a vessel in this time and season, and how, conversations with my mom, we disagree on things, and it's just learning how to, I don't know. Yeah. It's just being likable and still being a vessel who shares the truth during different seasons of life, but also just how that's changed from generation to generation to generation has been really valuable for me to learn, because now I have history and I have the future, and it's coming together. And how do you form that to change yourself, to be a better person and more likable?
I think another thing too, to help us, how do we, change these opinions, is not to be ignorant on things that we are passionate about.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times that we as Christians get ourselves into with, having a negative view towards other people and other people towards us, is that we are so passionate, and so we've hooked our trailer to this train and we're going, and we don't even know where it's going.
Right.
And
Haven't
so
really thought it through or heard the other side.
That goes towards like social issues. Politics is a huge one.
Yep.
Just be careful what you are passionate about. If it's not of the Bible, then it's probably not something good to be passionate about.
Yeah. If it's man-made,
Yeah.
I can guarantee you it ain't good.
Yeah, it's not. And so that's another thing that we can do. But it's important for us to be gracious and show truth. And I think we've kind of reiterated that a lot, is that when we're talking to people, one, don't be ignorant about the things that you are, but in the things that you are competent about, you speak those things with truth and love. That's it.
Right.
You know.
The more comfortable you are with a topic and you know it, then your blood pressure is not going to rise up
Right.
out of all the fears
Right.
of, am I about to get, totally slammed here? And you're not yourself anymore, but no, if you believe something and you're wanting to interact with people and be an influencer, then know a little bit about it so you can actually relax and listen to what they have to say, because that's where we learn something and we gain a better perspective and maybe even have a better approach with influencing them in another direction.
Or a lot of the times not specific to Bible things, but like just society as a whole, you might be wrong.
Yeah.
Like that,
Absolutely.
that you might be wrong. And now that's a novel idea.
Right.
That you actually might learn something new and realize that what you believed wasn't actually necessarily true. It might have been half true, but not totally true.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying, like, you got to be critical thinking and you got to be competent about the things that you hit your trailer to.
Yep.
Right.
Alan, you asked the question, what can we do to change opinions? And the thing is, we here at this table, we individually, our church can't change a global opinion, right? We can't change, we can't we can't change a global worldview, but what we can do is we can change the worldview that surrounds us, right? And so, you kind of started saying something, I thought this is where you're going when it kind of feeds into that about not being ignorant. We also can't be ignorant about how we're perceived.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times we just want to hide behind scriptures and we're going to be hated, right? And they're going to hate us because they're of the world and we're of God, and that's why they hate us.
Doesn't give you any excuse.
You need to take some ownership sometimes of how you've behaved. I mean, like I know I do.
Yeah.
Like I need to take ownership sometimes of how I've behaved, and I have not represented Jesus the right way.
When a child or when an adult always blames how people view them on others, that they lack
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
They don't understand.
Right.
And so we can't be ignorant of how people do view us.
Yeah.
And how, like, I remember, and I've talked about this before, when this was the late 90s, early 2000s, and a movie came out called Saved, and we viewed it on a college campus with college students, and because I was in college ministry at the time. And it was like, wow. I mean, there was a secular college campus, and we viewed this movie, and we laughed at it because we're like, oh, this is funny because ha ha ha. But then it occurred to us, this is how people actually view us. and they made all kinds of stupid, silly jokes, but the reality was this is how people viewed us. And so when we went back to our church and we're talking through, hey, we're talking through our discipleship leadership. Hey, we watched this movie, and here's a reality that we need to understand and face, is that this is how people view us. It became very much, no, it's not. That's just someone's raunchy opinion of us, and we don't need to put any stock in them. I'm like, no, you're missing the point. They portrayed this because they view us this way. And
the good news is if you really get to know people, it's easy to be able to portray the Christian faith in a better way, because just like sometimes we have an overinflated view of someone else on the opposite side, and they're a lot more normal and human than what we have them in our mind. It's the same way.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times in church planning, you guys have heard me say it, that people would be shocked that we were a Baptist church. We didn't have it in our name, and we didn't talk about it because that wasn't our identity. We're Christ followers, and we happen to be from this denomination. But many of them learned it in our membership class, or if they asked me specifically, "Hey, what denomination are you?" But every one of them, not every one of them, but like 70% of them were like shocked, and then they were like, I would never have visited if I'd known this was a Baptist church. And I know that makes us sad. And for some people, it might even kind of like make them irritated. But that's the reality. But every one of them, we didn't lose one person when they found out that we were Baptist because they liked us.
Yeah.
Now we had people leave the church over a period of time because that just happens. Maybe a better preacher down the road, or a different worship style, or whatever else. But
a different hymn singy dude.
Yeah, don't say worship leaders.
Yeah, that singy dude. Yeah, better singy dude down the
Well,
road.
and Alan, I mean, people would have never assumed that Tom Cruise was pastoring
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my gosh.
So
In
true.
Colorado.
in Colorado. I mean, it'd be nuts to think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, just to kind of feed on that, and mainstream media, Hollywood is not doing us any favors. I remember there's a show that has recently come out called Last of Us, right? And it's like a zombie show, and it's based on a video game. And then at one point, a character comes into the show, and he's this really bad guy, and they portray him as a preacher, as an evangelical, right? That does not exist in the video game. That character exists, but a backstory of him being an evangelical does not exist. And so there was lots of commentary from leftist Hollywood about how, as soon as I saw that character, I knew they were going to make him the bad guy from the game. And the comments are, it's pretty obvious that mainstream media points evangelicals in a bad light. Yeah. And so that's not helping our cause.
At least they notice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
they know we're different.
People on the left side are commenting, but they're
Starting to feel bad for us, aren't you?
Yeah, they're painting us in a bad light. And so they're saying, there's a bias against evangelicals in media as well, which doesn't help our cause. So
Well, and that's where I think the Matthew 5:11 comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like, this world is not for us. And we know that, but God is for his people. Yeah. And so we then should be for the other people he created. And that is one of the hardest things I've had to learn is just looking at someone else and be like, all right, he loves me and he loves that person and he loves us equally. And I don't know how, but I know it's my job to make sure that they understand how.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. For those of us who are Christ followers also that have children that are not walking in that way, and you know that there are other people that may be viewing them in a negative light, it just makes you all the more yearn for Christians who will meet people where they're at, love them, engage them where they're at, and not be rude. And for the most part, it hadn't happened, and I'm so grateful. But I know it's a concern, that
listen, David loves on Carson every time he sees him.
Such a difficult child.
He is a difficult child.
So I'm thankful for that.
We have gotten in a fight over text. So I will respond to you,
your
Carson.
comment about Taylor Swift. Oh man, you don't want to meet Meredith now.
Yeah, I know she's mad at me. Yeah, we knew that was going to happen, but I'm willing to stand on the truth.
Okay, yeah.
whoa.
That she's an overrated musician?
Yes.
Yeah.
Might need to build a bridge there. Well, very cool. Yeah, that could be a topic we talk about
Taylor
forever.
Swift?
No. Yeah.
No.
And I think it's just something that it's like life. We have to learn, and there's a pendulum that always swings. And hopefully, as a denomination, as evangelicals, we're learning, look, there may be a better way for us to engage society and influence people. And so hopefully we'll learn our lesson.